Hey there, this is Paige Schreiber on the campus of Huntington University, and you're listening to Rooted. Make sure you subscribe to us on SoundCloud and iTunes, and you can catch us on every Thursday evening at 7 on 105.5 WQHU. And as always, you can stream Forrester Radio anytime, anywhere on ForresterRadio.com through the TuneIn app. Today I'm sitting down with Zach McIntyre to talk about what it's like being a Catholic on Huntington University's campus. So, on this episode of Rooted, I'm talking to Zach McIntyre about what it's like being Catholic on campus. So, Zach, welcome. Just give me a little bit of a background of who you are and what you're doing here at Huntington.
Okay, yeah. I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and so I've been familiar with Huntington my whole life. And when it came time for me to pick a college, I became really attracted to the university here because of the film program mainly, and now I major both in film and history here now.
Oh,
so
cool.
yeah, I've been here for 4 years. I'm a senior now. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. So let's get right into it. So how have you always been Catholic? Was it growing up Catholic if you did?
Yeah, I've been Catholic my entire life. It goes way back in my family, to my great grandparents, coming over from Germany. My grandpa was a pretty devout Catholic. He raised his daughters Catholic, and then my mom raised me and my whole family. I have 5 other brothers and sisters, and my grandpa also comes from a large family of nine siblings. So quite a large family of we're all Catholic. And I grew up going to Catholic school. I was through kindergarten through high school, so 12 years of Catholic school, and yeah.
So what was it like coming to Huntington as your first experience not in a Catholic school, a different atmosphere?
Yeah, so coming to Huntington, I didn't really, growing up in the Catholic Church my whole life and going to Catholic school, I didn't really ever think there was a difference between Christian denominations. I always kind of thought we believed mainly the same thing, which we do, but the culture around it is a little different. So where I'd argue that the Catholic faith, the culture around it kind of leads more of a, I don't want to say secular, but I feel like they're more in tune with what's maybe happening around them, where here on campus, I feel as if we have a type of a bubble, I'd call it. So coming here on campus for my first time, I experienced chapel for the first time, which is what I learned was sort of a Christian non-denominational service, a church service, and it was strange. It was definitely different because the Catholic faith, it's definitely a more traditional liturgical thing. The music, the way everything's said, it's a little more historic.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a huge change for me to kind of get used to that. And that's not to say that I haven't learned from my experiences here. I've learned a lot about the Christian faith as a whole, what other people believe, and I've even reflected more on my own faith in that my time being here, and kind of grown a little deeper in kind of respect and awe of what I grew up knowing.
Yeah. So kind of going off of that, how has your religion classes been? Your experience in that, have you learned more or different views than what the Catholic faith shows?
Yeah, so coming in, I didn't really know what to expect because we had to take 3 religion courses. I didn't know what to expect from it. But I think the one that's really stood out to me the most was understanding the Christian faith, because to me, that was a Catholic history course. I had already learned everything in that class. I went to Catholic school since kindergarten, so I had already known all this history. And the professor would keep calling on me, say how do you view this, or what's it taught in the Catholic perspective. So I found that class to actually be really welcoming for Catholics in general. I thought it was very similar to what I had known and understood growing up. And some of the other classes were a little bit different. I took a Bible and a more interpretive biblical class, and those were a little different, mainly because when you're interpreting the Bible, for a Catholic, the Bible is a little different because the Old Testament includes more books.
Yeah.
So you miss out on certain books like that, and sometimes the interpretation is a little different. So there are different interpretive, just there's different interpretation.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to
Yeah.
say it. I mean, it's just kind of how it is. So you kind of come face to face with this challenge whenever you're in class, with these different classes.
Yeah.
And then, as you've been on campus, like, I'm sure you're, like, open about being Catholic. Like, have you got, like, mixed reviews on that? Like, people, like, appreciate it or, like, acknowledge it or, like, dislike it or...
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty open about it. Me and my roommate, we're both Catholic, and, I've met a number of Catholic people here. I actually met my fiance here, and she's also Catholic. So there are definitely a number of us on campus. But yes, I've been very open in discussion with people about it. People are very curious to know, like, what about this? What about this? And, there are these misinterpretations sometimes with Catholic faith, and I like to, address those and say, like, hey, well, we actually don't think like this. We think, a different way. And they'll say, oh, okay, like, hearing it from the source is a little different than, what you've, grown up knowing all your life. So, yeah, it's definitely, it's been a very positive experience. I mean, there are definitely people who, will say things otherwise. Will say, like, oh, Catholics aren't Christians. And, one of my very first classes here when I was a freshman, some girl mentioned, it was in a history class, and she said something about Catholics not being Christians, using it as an example for something. And the professor just looked at her, and she's like, you do know Catholics are Christians, right? So I've experienced things like that, and of course, like, even more recently in the last year, I've had someone, say the very same thing to me, which, I obviously don't believe, because, anyone that believes in Jesus, I'm obviously a Christian to me in my mind. So yeah.
So, like, you being a Catholic, like, and being a filmmaker, like, how does that work together? Like, have you, like, used that as part of your basis for film?
Yeah, so this is actually a question that was kind of introduced to me when I was in high school and I was a senior, graduating and getting ready to come to Huntington. One of my religion teachers posed this question to me, and she asked me, the very same thing, and I said that I wanted to be able to help people through my films, because that's kind of like, with Catholic social teaching, that was kind of like a big thing for me. So I wanted to be able to help people. And my teacher asked me, how are you going to help people through film? And originally, I kind of sat on it. I was like, I don't really know. But I kind of came to this conclusion that, like, the greatest way for me to be able to help people through film would be, through documentary filmmaking. And that's kind of what I've been pursuing and my passion is.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. Have you ever, like, thought about changing religions ever? Or, like, has Catholicism always been, like, there for you and, like, you've always, like, wanted to stay Catholic?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever thought about changing religions or even, Christian denominations. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's crossed my mind once or twice, like, what would it be like to, maybe grow up in this different religious perspective, or, maybe change the way I practice something to, a more, maybe like a Lutheran way or whatever. But I've never, fully committed in that regard. I've never, I've always kind of stayed true to my, Catholic faith. I've been Catholic my whole life, so. But yeah, I guess I've thought about things of that nature before.
Nice, yeah. Have you experienced any other Catholic services at all besides chapel? Like, have your friends taken you to any services, like, outside of Huntington or, like, around Huntington?
I'm trying to think. I have been to College Park over here a couple times with the cross-country team. To me, it just seemed very similar to our chapel services here. There's nothing wrong with them. Like, I don't like hate them, or anything like that. But definitely, it's still a very uncomfortable thing for me, just because of what I've been doing, for 22 years now. It's kind of like in my nature to, like, worship this way or pray this way, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. People pray in their own way, and they worship in their own way. So yeah, but I've definitely experienced these different traditions, and I've grown in respect for them.
Yeah. So, like, in closing, is there anything you want people to know about Catholicism in general? Like, any stereotypes you want to, like, kind of tell people that are wrong, or?
I don't know. I mean, there's always the, do we worship Mary? And, I would say to that, no, we do not worship Mary. We have this, honor and respect for her that we would of, any religious figure. When we say, when we pray, we're asking, Mary to intercede for us, because, we would say, a saint in heaven is closer to God than we are here on earth, because, they're physically or spiritually in heaven. So, it's just asking for those people to pray for us, because in the same way I would ask you to pray for me. So, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking to me today.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Zach McIntyre, for joining us on this episode of Rooted, and thank you for listening. Do you have an idea for a guest we should have on the show? Please email us at forresterradio@huntington.edu. Make sure you subscribe to Rooted on iTunes and SoundCloud. Remember, you can listen to Forester Radio on 105.5 WQHU over the air in Huntington, or go to foresterradio.com.